Part of the coming coup, the revolution the Democrats are planning around the election. Dan, stop saying that. No, thanks. I'll say what I want. Thank you very much, because it's happening. So part of their coming coup is a disinformation campaign. A disinformation campaign of lies, out of context quotes, and misinformation and disinformation fed into the public gullet every single day to make you believe that President Trump is unfit for office. Therefore, if he wins re-election, which is likely impossible, that they can destabilize the regime and say, look, this guy's just not fit. He's going to lead to the destruction of the United States. But to do that, they've got to get in your head that this guy's a clear and present danger to you every day. You got it? No matter what happens after the election,
Yep.
if it results in a Trump election, they've got to get you to believe this guy is a dangerous threat to your life. So you're going to see this just litany every day of new scandals. Friday, we had the fake news leak about how the president didn't want to visit American dead in a cemetery in France because he thought they were losers. A totally fake, invented story. My sources were there, made up. It's just a fabricated nonsense story designed in a disinformation campaign to hurt military families and their connection to Trump, who he's had a close bond with. That's what that was designed for. This latest leak, this Bob Woodward interview, which is a leak of the president's phone calls with him. Again, why he was talking to Bob Woodward, I have no idea. I have absolutely no idea. Whoever recommended this should be fired immediately. I'm not kidding. Immediately. Bob Woodward hates the president. He can't stand him. Bob Woodward will take everything out of context. So in this phone call with Bob Woodward, the president said this. I'll play the audio here so you can hear it yourself. He says, listen, I downplayed the virus because I didn't want to create a panic. That panic part, everybody's leaving out, and they're making this out to be a big scandal, despite the fact that the president said the same thing to all of us back on April 7th. So this is a March phone call about a month before that with Bob Woodward. Check this out.
Well, I think, Bob, really, to be honest with you,
Sure, I want you to.
I wanted to always play it down. I still like playing it down.
Yes, sir.
Because I don't want to create a panic.
Again, we run into this scenario, which we run into often with the president, where he's very blunt, ladies and gentlemen. And you know what? I'm getting like goosebumps talking about this because you see that? One of the assets the president has, which allows him to appeal to non-traditional Republican voters, union workers, black voters coming around to the Republican Party for the first time, minority groups like Hispanic voters in South Florida, we discussed yesterday on the show, moving to the president, numbers we haven't seen before. The positive of the president's approach to politics and his blunt, just say what's on your mind style is new voters tend to like that. New voters to the Republican Party. Not necessarily new voters in general. Does everybody get that? The downside to that is when you have a media operation whose full-time cause celeb is to take out the president of the United States, whatever he says bluntly will always be mischaracterized to mean something the president didn't mean. Now, I don't mean this as a knock on the president, but I think Joe would agree, having dealt with about more politicians than me. When Joe was doing her morning show, a popular one in Baltimore, politicians would call in every morning and Joe would have to listen to them as a producer. And I know he wanted to vomit half the time, but some of them were nice. But you get used to canned answers, right? It's why we don't interview.
Yes.
We have a very small group of politicians we interview on our show. We'll have Devin Nunes on the show this week because he doesn't give canned answers. But very few of them, that's why I just don't like interviewing politicians. Trump doesn't do that. Now, why do politicians give canned answers? They give canned answers because they understand if they massage the answer, they don't give any media, any left-wing media hacks, room to take it and run with it and create something he didn't say. The president doesn't do that. It's got an upside, attracting new voters to the president who like his blunt style, and a downside, the media is always going to attack you. So, of course, the media version of this was the president lied to America saying he downplayed the virus. Of course, they leave out the context of that, which I just played for you in the phone call, where he says, I didn't want anybody to panic. Which is odd, because if this was a scandal, Joe, right, that he was hiding this approach.
Yeah.
President was scandalously hiding from America the dangers of this while publicly saying something different. That's not what he said. Just a few weeks after this phone call, he said the exact same thing publicly. So why is this breaking news? Listen, gosh, I got to frame this right for you. And if I don't, I will be doing myself and you a huge disservice. If the president's stated ethos about how he was handling the coronavirus, we were serious about it, but publicly I was trying to downplay it because I didn't want to create a panic. If that was a scandal and we found out about this yesterday, then why wasn't it a scandal when he said this just a few weeks afterwards, which is the exact same thing in public? He said this on April 7th.
At the time, though, when Peter Navarro did circulate those memos, you were still downplaying the threat of coronavirus in the U.S. You were saying things like, I think it's a problem that's going to go away within a couple of days.
It will go away.
You said within a couple of days the cases will be down to 0.
Well, the cases really didn't build up for a while, but you have to understand, I'm a cheerleader for this country. I don't want to create havoc and shock and everything else, but ultimately, when I was saying that, I'm also closing it down. I obviously was concerned about it because I closed down our country to China, which was heavily infected. I then closed it down to Europe. That's a big move, closing it down from China and then closing it down from Europe and then ultimately closing it down to the UK. So, and it was right about that time. But I'm not going to go out and start screaming, this could happen, this could happen. So, again, as president, I think a president has to be a cheerleader for their country. But at the same time I'm cheerleading, I'm also closing down a very highly infected place, specifically the location, as you know, in China that had the problems. And we're closing it down, but we close it down to all of China, then we close it down to all of Europe. Those were big moves, and it was right about that time.
Folks, this was April 7th. Just a few weeks after the phone call with Woodard, where he says almost the exact same thing. I don't want to create a panic. He then laid out a few weeks later at a presser how he did all this stuff to take action against the coronavirus, but didn't see any benefit about creating a public panic. I swear to you, as I gave this cut to Paula this morning, and she listened to it, she said to me, "Did you not?" She goes, "I don't get it. What's the scandal here?" Keep in mind, she's not, she's obviously a Republican like me, but she doesn't live and die every moment of politics like I do. She's usually a pretty straight shooter with me. She's like, "I don't understand what the scandal is." The answer is no one else does either if you're not a liberal lunatic. He said to Woodard in his blunt, non-massage, non-focus group tested talking point, maybe he needs to learn better how to talk to these people. Maybe he shouldn't talk to them at all. Fair enough. Fair criticism. But it's not a fair criticism to suggest that this is somehow a bombshell story when he said the same thing to the entire country a few weeks later.
You just heard Dan Bongino.